And then, of course, we have the Baxter Laboratory. I read that in the air a few weeks ago, where they inadvertently, supposedly, in this maximum high security place, where you can't move without signing forms and going through stages, etc., just inadvertently sent all these vials out of contaminated flu vaccine to different places, where they combined the human flu with, I think it was the avian flu, the killer one. They'd done the very thing supposedly we're all terrified of. And then I read the article a week or so ago where one of the top guys for the United Nations admitted that this so-called swine flu had to have come from a laboratory, because you can tell by the particle types of genes, etc., that's in it. And I'm going to go back to an article I've read ages ago, just to show you what goes on. And this is from, it's called CIDRAP, SIDRAP, that's to do with the Center for Disease Control. It says here, by Robert Roos, who's a news editor, January the 14th, 2004. One of the worst fears of infectious disease experts is that the H5N1, that's the bird one, avian influenza virus now circulating in parts of Asia will combine with a human-adapted flu virus to create a deadly new flu virus that could spread around the world. Right, 2004, January 14th, remember. It could happen, blah, blah, blah. Then they give you the lead-up, which is supposed to set it in your mind. And then it says, now, rather than waiting to see if nature spawns such a hybrid, US scientists are planning to try to breed one themselves in the name of preparedness. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention will soon launch experiments designed to combine the H5N1 virus and human flu viruses and then see how the resulting hybrids affect animals. The goal is to assess the chances that such a reassortant virus will emerge and how dangerous it might be. So they can make these things so darned easily, can't they? Incredibly easily, very quickly too. And there are subsequent reports which I've read on the air confirming they'd already done it. They'd done it. They even tell you how they do it. There's two techniques that different use, yada, yada, yada. And so there's nothing that they cannot make. However, they just can't get, with any certainty, any antidote to tell us, which is a lie. You see, what I'm reading here is biowarfare. Everything in the CDC and all these centers are to do with biowarfare. It's disease control, not eradication, control. When you make them, you're in control of them. But if you look at United Nations, treaties have signed with all the countries for 50-odd years or more, they do agree that for every step of viral mutation that they create in the lab, they must have a 100% working antidote to it. You understand what antidote means? That means they have the antidote to everything that's created. Yet the rest of the regular media gives you the pablum. They're desperately trying to find an antidote to this pig flu that's suddenly going to mutate in the fall. It'll be touch and go if they can do it. It's utter rubbish. We are played in the matrix, and given cartoons for major media. Because the truth is always along with it in reports like this, you see. And I've read an article before from the Porton Downs biowarfare establishment in Britain, where the reporter went in, spent a day with these guys, or a couple of days, and listened to them talk at the breakfast table about all the ethnic-specific viruses they created, where they could target any gene type and kill them all off. They had viruses so advanced they could release them and they'd know that multiply so many millions of times and then stop, just like that, like a clock. That's how far ahead they are in creating this stuff. Nothing should be any surprise to us, because it all ties in, doesn't it, with the population reduction, eugenics, etc. There's not even the regular cartoon media out there not talking and giving a lot of time to the Optimum Population Trust and other organizations, non-governmental organizations that work with the United Nations and governments. We don't vote them in. Who are demanding we drastically reduce population, we mandatorily bring in sterilization controls, etc., etc. These guys wrote this agenda over 100 years ago. And when you read through H.G. Wells and the other propagandists for this same agenda, they have never changed their tune on any part of their agenda. Never. They never back off. And they never change it. So when they say something, you can believe them. They'll do it. Here's Old Thinker News, December 19th, 2007. Coercive population control from the mouth of Frank Notestein. Very important person, Frank Notestein. This guy worked for the League of Nations because their World Health Organization also had a mandate for depopulation. And then it became the United Nations, and the same Doctor Who, WHO, went into action. And people think they're there to help them. Their mandate is depopulation. These guys that want to give you injections, think about why would the wolf, dressed up like Little Red Riding Hoods, want to give you an injection to make you healthy, when its mandate is to depopulate and sterilize you. Read their histories. This is by Daniel Taylor, 2007. Frank Notestein, 1902 to 1983, was one of the most influential population control activists and demographers of the 20th century. His work led to the establishment of demography as an academic discipline. He didn't start it, by the way. Lord Halford did. He worked as the first director of the Population Division of the United Nations. The Population Division of the United Nations, for the harder thinking, was instrumental in the founding of John D. Rockefeller's Population Council, who he also worked with in 1952. And was director of population research at Princeton University. In a paper written by Notestein in 1969 titled The Problem of Population Control, he outlines a strategy of quickening the pace of depopulation, and that's what I'm going to go into after the following messages. I'm Alan Watt. We're cutting through the matrix, trying to show people the histories of the big organizations that work with governments, dictate to governments, and are unelected by any of the people in any country. That's always been the way of it in reality. Frank Notestein, a real winner, a man with a mission to drastically reduce the population, a man who praised, of course, China's population reduction policies, called a moral state and all the rest of the world to follow, worked with the Rockefeller Foundation and other big foundations, all dealing with bringing the population down by all means possible. It says here, in a paper written by Notestein in 1969 titled The Problem of Population Control, he outlines a strategy of quickening the pace of depopulation. He admits that economic modernization would bring the birth rate down automatically. It's true enough when people, and Charles Galton Darwin went into that in great detail. If you can give people more material goods, they'll postpone marriage, put it off altogether, have fewer children, and go for the material benefits instead. However, Notestein goes on to state that more drastic measures must be taken because, in his opinion, it's really his boss's opinion, this method would not be fast enough. Coercion means force, and the institution of a totalitarian regime are Notestein's solutions. Totalitarian regime. That's why they love and set up modern-day China. This is what he said. The need for an early reduction of the birth rate is acute. Birth rates in the past have fallen more rapidly in the context of modernization and social economic change, but there is nothing in the European experience to suggest we must rely solely on gradual and automatic changes in society. One often meets the glib generalization, particularly in the underdeveloped countries, that it's only necessary to concentrate on social and economic modernization, since it's well known that we can rely on these processes to bring the birth rate down automatically. The argument neglects the time span required for such an adjustment. Even if we could be assured of rapid social and economic development, the lag in transition between the reduction of death rates and the reduction of birth rates poses enormous problems of population growth. He continues with this. Even if successful, voluntary family planning programs cannot be expected to resolve the world population dilemma. These guys are convinced there is one. Now, don't ever jump into that. Just think and do your studies to see if there even is one. Because all the studies from the United Nations, the same ones that are pushing this crap, are the same people that tell you every year that the populations in Europe have been falling for about 50 years, and that's the excuse they use for bringing in massive immigration.